Digital artist Yiying Lu, known for her Dumpling Emoji and the Twitter Pale Whale, has won accolades for her cross-cultural branding and design work. She's a leading speaker on creativity and innovation, bilingual in English and Mandarin, and coming into the Stronghold office today to talk with Tammy Camp.
We're so excited to have our first guest, a longtime personal friend of mine and internet sensation artist, Yiying Lu, which is probably an artist that everyone knows but doesn't actually know that they know.
I keep the mystery.
Yeah. You have many famous works of art, I think, on the internet. Two being, when I first saw your work many times in 2008. You're known for the original creator of the Twitter Pale Whale. So Twitter used to go down a lot, and their 404 page used to be the whale that you created. And then, as if that's not enough, you basically have all of the food, the Asian food, in all of the emoji packs on everybody's iPhones. So thank you for being on the show today. Yiying, I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Tammy. I'm so glad to be here. It's been a very interesting journey so far. I think that technology in some way is enabling me to be here in San Francisco, chatting with you. We were colleagues at 500 startups many years ago, but it was, I think, technology itself that connected me with the community here and the community around the world. Because the Twitter Whale, the Twitter Whale was created back in 2006 or 7, when I was living in Sydney, New South Wales, no pun intended. But I was an international student in Sydney, and I was born and raised in Shanghai. And I went to Sydney for my university study, and I created the whale at the time as an illustration to express my love and desire to be overseas with friends and family in Shanghai and in London. I did exchange study in Central St. Martin's in London. So at the time I was back in school, UTS, University of Technology Sydney in Sydney, New South Wales, and I made that piece of art initially because Facebook was just coming about and people will invite you to different things. And physically I'm in Sydney, and then I'll receive invitations from London, invitations from Shanghai, invitations from Hong Kong and all that sort of thing, and I couldn't be there in person. So I made that piece initially as a metaphor that, hi, I miss your birthday or your anniversary or your wedding, but my wish is so big, it's like this gigantic whale, and I have these little birds carry the whale, my biggest wish, across the ocean for you. And the name of the whale was actually called Lifting a Dreamer, because it's in actuality, the whale cannot fly, in our current three-dimensional reality. But with art, you can use your imagination and you can have the birds to carry this heavy entity that we perceived as, but I kind of turn it around as it's heavy, as in this wish for you is so heavy and so gigantic, like this whale, and I have my little helper carry the wish to you. So it was a personal piece, but you know how the universe works, and I don't. And what happened is around, I think, end of 2006, early 2007, there's a teeny tiny little startup you might know, which is Twitter. And at the time, the co-founder of Twitter was Biz Stone, found my image online and licensed it, and the rest is history. So,
wow, so he was just kind of searching online for a whale or something that had birds on it?
If you listen, there was actually a recording in NPR. Right. I heard from someone actually asked the question in NPR, National Public Radio. It's like, people are interested to know who's the artist? And he mentioned my name. I was like, oh, he knows my name, yay! And it was really interesting how the internet connect people. And it's also interesting for him when he saw the illustration, his reaction was, his interpretation of the art is, oh, our company work, like all my people, all my employees are like the Twitter birds working so hard. We're solving this scalability issue. And this picture is kind of a perfect representation of the situation that Twitter was in at the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
He licensed it from this website, later on was being acquired by Getty Images. But the website back then was called iStock Photo. And so Twitter at the time was a small startup. And I believe that Biz was licensed it as a non-exclusive license thing. And then the next thing I know is, there was people reaching out from different parts of the world and say, hey, we saw your whale a lot. And then before that, there was also folks just from the internet started literally a Love Pale Whale fan club.
Wow.
It was like everywhere. People just pinged me on Twitter, on Flickr, on Facebook, and it just became a phenomenon. And I had folks like Tom Limogelo from New York and Sean Osteen, like all these people that I've never met, but they kind of just coming together and did this club.
I mean, it was a real internet phenomenon at that point in time. I mean, it's really like a big part of the internet culturally. I mean, it was a big moment in time, and there was all these renditions. It was almost like the first, piece of art that was popularized in like a meme format, where it just kind of took a life of its own. So there were so many different versions of it.
As I said, I just came out of school, and it was like, it was exciting, but in the same time overwhelming to see the internet or people from around the world responding to a single art piece that I created initially as a personal piece, and in the same time, celebrating the community, like seeing people making cakes, making
murals. I've seen like murals on the side of
and big gigantic sculpture. Somebody even tattooed it on the leg, and it even made into some of the cartoons in Japan. And so it was very fun and overwhelming in the same time. But then there's also like a lot of, I would say, a lot of pressure onto me, because I just came out of the school.
Right.
And as a young artist, and at the time, I think digital licensing was not something that has been really talked about yet. I mean, because it's so new, right?
That's right.
And as I mentioned, Twitter licensed it Twitter at the time licensed it as a non-exclusive license, which doesn't necessarily, and they didn't know. When they licensed it, they also didn't know that what's going to come out of it. But it was interesting, as in, what was stressful for me is starting to see different usage of the artwork as products. And that was different than people are just doing it for fun. That was for a commercial usage. And not only that piece, but also all other pieces that I did, which was on my website, later on was being used by different companies, larger companies, different organizations with no consent, or like there was never a agreement. So it was a very stressful time. And to the degree, for almost 6 to 8 months, I was not able to create, because I would get onto like Main Street in Sydney, go to a bookshop. I would see like this larger campaign that was in the bookshop was completely like a ripoff of what I have put on my website, and seeing like larger company was using an art piece that I did as their company logo. I have to actually chase it down, and the amount of work that I do talking to legal like lawyers, I almost become like a young associate, because I have to collect all the evidence. I actually have to take photos of showing people this is a copy of copyright law infringement, or doing screenshots on Etsy and show like, I've never given them permission to do this. So it was a very stressful and quite a painful time. And to the degree, I remember my parents saw me being so stressed out. My mom said, I wish that never happened to you. I mean, I wish your whale was never famous.
Yeah.
And so
then like, but you did get some.
Yes, but that was the reason why I need to tell you this.
Yeah.
Because it was during, like, it was almost like a very, like, it was a very downtime.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you're being featured in New York Times and all the other publications. But then in the same time, you're so young and you just came out of the school.
Yeah.
You don't know how to protect your rights.
Know. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, here's the thing what was really miraculous was I was so worried about just creating something new and then somebody else is going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided I'm not going to create. I'm just going to not create so that nobody's going to take my creation. And that lasted for at least 6 months. And I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed creatively. Like I feel that I couldn't do anything because I had so much fear.
Right.
And the only thing that brought me joy was get onto YouTube and watch comedy shows. Like that was the only thing. Just binge watch comedy, stand-up comedy. And then there was this recommendation video on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a person that I never knew. And it was a 3D animation about what's happening in NBC. There was this talk show host that was working at NBC before, and now they had a huge fight, and NBC was, forcing him out of the company. And it just so happened his name is Conan O'Brien. It was recommended by YouTube. I guess it's intentionally recommended by AI. And so I then watched his last NBC show when he was giving the goodbye speech.
Oh, that goodbye speech was something to remember.
Yeah.
That was, what a speech.
Yeah. And he said, people, especially young people, never be cynical.
Yeah.
Cynicism doesn't lead you anywhere. Nothing is going to turn out exactly what you want it.
Yeah.
But if you work hard and if you're kind, amazing things going to happen. He's like, believe me, amazing things going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, I literally was froze. I was literally froze. And I'm like, I don't know who he is. And I just started to cry. I was like, I don't know who he is. He just made me cry. And I was so emotional. I had no idea what's happening. I was like, this is really weird. So that was like a moment. I think there's some sort of energy that was blocked, was being moved at the time when I was watching that show. Something just kind of snapped, and I came back to my table. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna be kind and work hard and see what's gonna happen. And so I kind of started to be able to create again. I just said, well, I'm gonna do more work and see what's gonna happen. So I started to do more create work, and I was watching more of his show. Just saw all his other previous work via YouTube, and then 8 months later, after that computer virtual encounter through YouTube algorithm recommendation, 8 months later, I got an email from TBS.
Right.
At the time was his new company. I know that he's now in HBO Max, but at the time he just joined the TBS. I got an email from TBS, and I remember it was a long title, but I saw Conan O'Brien's name on it, and then I read the email. It was actually from TBS staff member says, "Hey, we're working for Conan, and Conan's new show is happening, and we would love to commission you to do a new piece for Conan's show opening called the Conan O'Brien Pale Whale, because he's very pale and he's riding a whale."
That's amazing. So you went from, seeing him, you were in this, state where you couldn't create anymore, and he inspired you to kind of create again. And then 8 months later, you get an email from one of his staff members wanting to commercially support you by like commissioning your art for his new show. How did this make you feel?
Seriously, it was miraculous. How I felt extremely, extremely happy. Yeah. I was like, whoa, whatever he said, it's true.
You're like, it's working.
It's working. Yeah, it was really amazing. And
so back to, you seeing your artwork blowing up on the internet and, people kind of not paying royalties or rights, 10 years ago, and fast forward today, now you're doing a lot of NFTs, right? And so
I'm just starting as well.
And how does this change the game for someone like you, an artist like you?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good question. And I think that a lot of artists or a lot of designers or even a lot of creative people who are in advertising, entertainment would agree that, to be honest, before NFT, the only way to really commercialize your artistic expression, you can either be a fine artist and put it on canvas and sell them as art pieces, but then it's hard to track royalties. Or that's what most people do. You become a designer, you become a advertiser, you become a marketer. In some way, your artistic expression is always attached with a product or a service.
That's right.
Right? And for the longest time, I was making illustration, licensing them to different wine labels. That was like in the beginning of my career. I remember I was doing branding design. I started to realize, actually I could make logos, and that's a more scalable format. But again, even I'm making logo, like you can make logo and style guides, and you can have marketing campaigns. The creative expression is still attached with a organization or commercial entity.
That's right.
And so I would make a really great campaign with a really, beloved icon. And later on, if the company gets sold, chances are the new company might still use it, or they might use the larger company who might just absorb the company, and the amount of work that has put in will be irrelevant. And so what I started to see is the artistic expression later on become a consumable and also disposable item, which started to become a question to me. Is there a way that it still enables people to create?
That's right.
But the creation itself actually has a value.
That's right. So it's kind of similar to so artists, for example, it's either a branding campaign or a one-time marketing campaign that is probably paid at one time or over a certain period of time, and when that's concluded, it's done. And then if you're in fine arts, then it's you draw a piece of canvas, and even though it might be a higher price tag, it still is a one-time purchase, and whoever purchases it owns it. And then after, if they want to sell it, it doesn't actually tie back to the artist. So NFTs are, in a way, enabling artists like you to kind of own the rights, so you can have royalties, more like the music industry, right?
And the royalty comes from the initial smart contract that you sign when you're minting your artwork. And the other really wonderful thing about the non-fungible token is that because it's non-fungible, meaning that you can do one-on-ones, you can also do multiple editions, right? So, I mean, it's fascinating to me, because if in the past, if I create a digital piece on the computer and people ask me which one is the original piece? I'm like, what do you mean by original piece? It's like, the original creation, you know, your initial piece. I'm like, well, but it's created in a computer. But then they'll be like, how do I know it's an original piece, right? And you can download it from the internet, and it's a JPEG. And they're like, why should I spend money on a JPEG? Well, the NFT is enabled that authenticity,
right?
And the truest connection between the collector and the artist. So if you purchase the, say, one-on-one from the artist, which you did, and thank you, I will transfer this art piece to your wallet, and that entire transaction is transparent, and it's also public. Anybody could trace it. And the idea, I think, of this piece of technology that I think is very important here is it gives this ability for people to trace back the provenance of the original art piece.
That's right. And that's what's so amazing about just blockchain in general. It's an immutable database that can be used for multiple industries. It can be used for healthcare. It can be used for, supply chain. And now it's being used for, artists such as yourself to be able to track that provenance of the origination of the piece of art, and then to be able to let communities such as you sustain themselves over the long term. Yeah. So it's an amazing thing.
It is. And the other thing I think it's also was surprising to me just in the last year or so, is that you are able to actually make a human-to-human connection through this new piece of technology in a way that I just recently did a job on Maker's Place, and it was fascinating how you could also connect with your collectors, or whether it's in person or offline. I was at NFT NYC, and I remember I was just finishing a panel discussion, and then there was a few people come up to me and say, Yiying, I'm one of your collector. I had your red panda. I had your whale. And it was amazing to actually get the chance to thank the people who has supported you in person.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because if you think about it, in the past, if you purchase a piece, from the gallery, unless you're going to like the opening show, you get the chance to actually talk to the artist, let alone the artist already passed away. But in this case, there is a real life exchange that's happening. And I think that's really special.
That's amazing. Let's switch gears here. Let's talk about food.
Yes!
Our favorite topic. I remember when we worked at 500 Startups together, I found out that you love dumplings. And then I love dumplings, and then that's where it all started, right? Yes. Our love for dumplings, and I ended up taking you to one of my favorite dumpling places.
That's right, NY China.
Time, NY China, Martin Yan, and so there's so much to unpack there. So
yes.
So you love dumplings, and actually you have created the Dumpling Emoji. That's in all the iPhones now. You actually went to the Emoji Consortium.
Yes, in iPhone, Android, and all the other platforms, Twitter, Facebook.
But it was mind-blowing because I didn't even know that there was something called the Emoji Consortium.
Yeah,
Unicode
Consortium.
The Unicode Consortium. That you have to go and you have to petition.
Yeah.
Like why you think that this emoji should be added to the emoji pack. And so tell me about that and what inspired you to get, starting with the dumpling added to all of the iPhones and the Androids and the mobile devices worldwide.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always a fun thing to say because, and thank you for taking me to NY China. That's how no, seriously, I gotta give you full credit. I mean, you're the first person who took me to NY China. That's also where I later on met Chef Martin Yan, and that's another story to share in the future maybe. But the story of the dumpling emoji actually is not only me, but also my friend Jennifer Lee. At the time, I just moved to San Francisco from Sydney, Australia. And Jenny and we met in New York City at actually the first Shorty Awards in 2009. So 6 years later, I was moving to San Francisco, and we were reconnected by a mutual friend. And so we decided, as all the Asians do, reconnect with each other over dumplings. So she invited me to her place to have pot stickers, and she sent me a picture of pot stickers, and I was very excited. I was about to reply back and say, yay, dumplings, but I couldn't find a dumpling emoji. I was like, what? There's no dumpling emoji on my phone. And then she's like, yeah. And then I was like, now what?
And at the time, like, what was there on
and there was just no dumpling.
Just like
it was
hamburger,
I think hamburger,
hot dog,
and chips. You're making me hungry. And I think there was ramen. There's bento box, but there is no dumpling. And so I went back to my table. I said, okay, well, I'm a designer. I have imagination. Maybe I can do something about it. So I went back to my table and I just decided to make it. And then I just sent it back to her. It was like a 1.0 version of the beta version of the dumpling emoji. It was a dumpling with like heart eyes, and it was a GIF animation. And I just sent it to her, and she said, "Did you make it?" I was like, "Yeah." And then later on, I went to her place, and we had dumplings, and we had lots of people in the house. And people are having different backgrounds, and they said, oh, dumpling is not just Asian, it's actually very universal. Like Georgia have khinkali, Japan has gyoza, Italy have ravioli, pierogies, empanadas, I've done a lot of research on that. So we just realized this is actually more than just, an Asian cuisine. It's actually a universal cuisine, and it encapsulates all cultures and all countries. And so Jennifer did more digging and find out the Unicode Consortium, which is a nonprofit organization that's in Silicon Valley, which consists with a lot of linguistic people, programmers from retired Apple computer company or existing folks still working at Google. And so she and we proposed the proposal together in person in early 2016. Not only with the dumpling, but also with the chopsticks, the fortune cookie, and the takeout box.
That's right.
Because at the time, I think Jenny was talking to the folks, and there was also already people wanting to have these Asian cuisine emoji, or Asian American cuisine emoji onto the keyboard, but they don't have the artwork yet because emoji is visual. And so at that time, obviously, that was not my job. That was not my career, but it was definitely my calling. And I said, okay, I'm just going to make it. So I designed it, and we did also, I did the boba tea emoji as well.
Oh.
We actually proposed. The boba tea emoji was also born during the time I was at 500. Because remember, we were doing a lot of Slack boba runs, and people always want to go out and do boba runs. So I designed a boba tea emoji, and we submitted together with the other 4 emojis. But unfortunately, at the time, there was no data to prove the significance of the boba tea. So the proposal was being rejected in 2015. I was devastated. But at least the other 4 emojis made to the final candidate. They have emoji candidate. And it was finally become available on everybody's phone in the end of 2000, I believe it was 2017.
Wow.
They all became available on people's keyboard.
That's amazing. So everybody's seen this is what I'm saying. That's what I was telling our audience, is that everybody has seen your artwork, but they just don't know it. So what is that? And tell me, I think you mentioned, what does dumpling mean in Asian, the translation of dumpling?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because the translation of dumpling, there is actually no single translation of dumpling in Asian culture. because it's such a diverse food. It's literally a pocket with something inside. But the closest, version in Asian culture or Chinese culture is jiaozi, which is the gyoza in Japanese. And in Chinese, you also have the soup dumpling, which is the xiaolongbao, which is the one that you took me to NY China eating. But there was different forms of sort of a pocket with something in it. But my favorite thing is later on in 2017, I did a very fun collaboration with IDEO Shanghai, where they had me going to their office in Shanghai and as a creative collaborator. And at the time they said, we would love to have you create something inspired by the community and, something that resonated with the community, but also yourself. And so I was doing a lot of research. I've already done the dumpling emoji, which is about to be released. But the community really said, we want to have you do like a character of the dumpling, like an embodiment of the dumpling, as like a actual character has eyes and face and expression. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, how I'm gonna start this, because every single culture has a very different interpretation of dumpling, like ravioli in Italy and crêpe lèche in Jewish culture and, empanada. So I did more digging. And I realized that in ancient Chinese text, there's a book called the Classic Mountain and Sea. They actually have a illustrated version of the dumpling, which is the wonton soup dumpling. And literally the name of that character is called wonton. But that was a different writing. It was a writing with the water radical, because the actual Chinese character of wonton is the food radical, but it was using the water radical, which is literally translating into English is primordial chaos. I'm like, oh my God, like, dumpling actually was originated from the primordial chaos, which makes perfect sense.
That's right, because you have two things folded into one.
Yeah, and the other thing is dumpling also can be translated as bao, right? Like this, the xiaolongbao, which is the package, right? And if you look at the Chinese character, bao is actually like a baby, almost like a baby in the mom's womb. And that kind of also is a perfect metaphor of, the Big Bang. Like it's like everything was in this chaotic sort of watery scenery, kind of like a xiaolongbao that you eat. It can be a little tiny chaos.
That's amazing.
So I was like, oh my God, it's a very important piece of a humanity sort of discovery, right? So I realized that every time you eat a dumpling, metaphorically, you're opening a new universe in your mouth. That was the reason why that Asian culture, in our culture, we eat dumplings during like Lunar New Year, because we don't know how the year is going to turn out.
That's right. It's a surprise.
It's a surprise.
Every single time. You don't know if it's going to be pork or shrimp or fish or something else.
Or vegetarian.
Yeah, that's right. Or vegetarian. It's amazing.
Yeah, so that was one of my little contribution to the keyboard, but also hopefully also helped business too, because I actually had folks work at NY China. They had a national dumpling week, and they actually started to sell like different dumplings, and it was really great to hear that small businesses were also benefited from, like, I have people coming to me and say that. But it was quite sad during COVID-19, as you know, like a lot of businesses are being affected, especially food business, and
that's right.
Vendors working in those areas. So would love to do more to support.
All right, so you've done the Twitter Fail Whale, you've done Conan O'Brien's whale, you've done all of the emoji, Asian food emojis, and so lately you're so well known for all of the artwork and the impact that you've done on the internet. So you've transitioned into selling these NFTs, online, which has quite frankly become very, very popular because, you're kind of internet famous, Yiying. So your your artwork is in demand. So just tell me what's, we have Art Basel coming up, and then now we have Sotheby's getting into NFTs. Tell me what you have around the corner.
Right. Well, I started to really kind of dive into NFT from last year. My first job was on Nifty Gateway, and it was the Happy Creative Land 001 with a bunch of red pandas and giant pandas. And then I did another job early this year, which is in May, on OpenSea, called A Whale of a Time. But it was different kinds of whales. With the golden whale shark, it was in celebration of the whale community 1-year anniversary. But also 50% of the proceeds goes to 2 ocean conservation nonprofits. And thank you for your support of being one of the collectors.
I was lucky enough to know you, to be able to snag one of those up. So I actually own it with, who is the?
You were, so there was only 2 pieces of the whale shark.
That's right.
One is owned by you, and the other piece is actually owned by the whale shark on the internet, Whale Shark Pro.
Yeah, that's right, Whale Shark Pro,
who was really a great friend and also a supporter. And I'm just really glad that I get the chance to connect with him because I made a whale shark, literally.
That's amazing.
I started to create these series of art pieces from beginning of last year, and it was actually called The Very Hungry Red Panda. So I created the panda, the red panda, to celebrate the AAPI month the year before. And so I want to do a whole collection. And at the time, Adobe also was giving me a sort of residency. So I created initially I created these animals as a response to the United Nations Biological Diversity Initiative to save the endangered animals.
Right.
So I was creating all these animals from rhinos to red panda, and one of them was created, actually each of the pieces was created the day before the actual animal day. So I would have like a red panda on the red panda day, and the whale shark on the whale shark day. And at the time, I was just connecting with folks at OpenSea. It was all very kind of funny and punny at the same time. I was connecting with one of the founder, Alex, on OpenSea, and Alex introduced me to whale shark because he saw the whale shark piece. He said, "Do you know whale shark?" And I had no idea, by the way. Like at the time, I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about? Like the whale shark in the Pacific Ocean?" And he's like, "No, whale shark on Twitter." And I said, "I don't think I know him yet." And he said, "Let me connect with you, and let me connect you with him." And so that's how I connected with whale shark, was literally through art.
Amazing. So Whale Shark Pro is actually one of the largest NFT collectors on the internet, right?
Yeah, he is the whale shark, and so he was so kind and also so wonderful. We also shared a lot of things in common. He's also Asian descent, and he said, "I really would love to find a way to support you, but also it was great to see what you're doing, to advocate for culture through art." And so then I did another job, which is in August on Maker's Place. I actually know the founders of Maker's Place for 4 years. We met here in San Francisco in person and have been friends ever since. And I always wanted to do a collaboration with them. And so finally we get the chance to release the very first collaboration in August in celebration of their Series A fundraising called the Makers of Magic. So we have unicorns, Phoenix, and Pegasus, like the whole pack. And it was a lot of fun working on that. And so then I was doing NFT.nyc a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
We also decided to do another job, which I call it the Luminary, which was a play on with my name because my last name is Lu. And I had this character, I've been calling her Lulu, and it was a female character that was integrated with all kinds of shapes and colors. And it was my way of sort of express my love towards my root and my culture. And the initial piece that was released was the Moon Goddess. It was a celebration of the Moon Festival, the Autumn Moon Festival in September, which happened to be their Maker's Place virtual exhibition. So I did that, and I decided to do a whole series around her because people were very interested. And so I did a whole collection of the luminary Lulu around the Moon Goddess and all the other sort of shapes and colors to depict like the feminine energy, intuition, and nature.
That's amazing. And so you've done those for NYC NFT Week, and all these other ones that you've done previously. What's next?
Yeah, what's next?
Or can you talk about it? Can you talk about it? What are we going to see next, and where is it going to be?
Okay, so at the moment it's still sort of working in progress, but I will be very happy to let you know that anybody who is interested in seeing what's next, whether there will be a emoji NFT or whether there will be more whale NFTs, join us on my Discord, which is yiyingmoji.com. So it's my first name, Yiying. Not emoji, but Yiying Moji. Just replace the E with Yiying.
Okay.
And Yiying means happy and creative.
We will definitely put a link in the YouTube description so we can keep our audience posted.
Yeah, and I would love to see the discussion around it because I'm actually working on a new collectible job, which is going to be very exciting. And I would just give the hint out there. It have something to do with the Chinese zodiacs.
Nice.
Yes.
And also, where can people find your work and find you on Twitter?
You can follow me on Twitter. Actually, you can be friend with me on Twitter. It's at Yiying Lu, which is my full name, and also my website, yiyinglu.com. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the other. It's all Yiying Lu concentrated.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Yiying, for sharing your story with us. I'm so honored to have you as our first guest on this new journey that we're taking here at Stronghold, and I just can't wait to see what's coming next from you.
Thank you for having me, and I love doing this. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.